What's up, everybody? In today's show, we dissect the SEC football media poll. We'll tell you what they got wrong, and we ask Greg Sankey some tough questions about the current state of the SEC. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. Get 50% off your first year. All right, we're going to get into our conversation with Greg Sankey. You do not want to miss it. Broken up into two parts here on this episode. Every year at SEC Media Days, we get a chance to visit with the commish. And look, these past couple of years, we've had some tougher and tougher questions we've had to ask him. So he's a good sport, answered questions as well as he could. So you do not want to miss that. That's coming up in the next segment. But first, we did want to hit on this, talk about a Friday news dump. On Friday, we got the SEC media poll officially out, where we found out the SEC predicted order of finish, who's going to win the SEC according to the voters, and who made the first, second, and third team all SEC preseason teams. So without further ado, let's dive into it. And we'll start with the SEC predicted champion. This is according to the media that voted at SEC Media Days. And they picked Texas. And basically here, they call it points. I don't know if it's total votes or it's just tabulated with points, because basically, they ask you to predict the order finish and who's your SEC champion. And so Texas was overwhelming. 96 points for Texas. So they are the favorite to win the SEC championship. Behind them, Georgia at 44, Alabama at 29, LSU at 20. And then there's a huge drop-off. And this is kind of what we found at SEC Media Days last year, is those are basically the four teams that everybody's predicting to vie for the SEC title / make the playoff and vie for a championship. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. But again, in terms of predicted SEC champion, overwhelmingly, like Texas has double the number of points than that of Georgia. So everybody thinks Arch Manning, Steve Sarkisian, year two in the SEC. They made it to the SEC title game last year. Fell short. Didn't you think at halftime when Carson Beck, it was announced he wasn't coming back and Gunnar Stockton was going to start the second half, didn't it feel like you thought Quinn Ewers, being a savvy vet in Texas, were going to win it? They didn't. Georgia still prevailed. So, but people think in year two in the SEC, Texas is going to take that huge leap forward and be an SEC champion. It is funny, though. I saw some Big 12 people arguing, wait, Texas didn't even dominate the Big 12 when they were here. They really going to step foot in the SEC and dominate there? Look at what Sark's been doing recruiting-wise these last 3 years. I mean, had they stayed in the Big 12, I think Texas would have been dominated in the Big 12. So, I digress. But Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, behind them, they had South Carolina again. I don't know if these are votes, but South Carolina had 5. Oklahoma had 3. Vanderbilt and Florida each with 2. So that means 2 people voted for Vanderbilt to win the SEC. And then Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Auburn all with 1. I checked with our buddy Zach Blackerby. He did not vote Auburn to win the SEC. So I don't know who that one vote was. But that's kind of how it goes. And so tying into that, your SEC predicted order of finish. And it'll look a lot the same at the top. Texas is predicted to finish first in the SEC, followed by Georgia, Alabama 3, LSU 4. And if you look at the tabulated points in those columns, Texas at 30-60, Georgia at 29-57. So it's not a huge difference in points there in terms of predicted order of finish. And then Alabama's at 27-83, LSU at 26-68. So again, another one that feels like you could flip-flop. If you think LSU is going to finish third, Alabama fourth. To me, the big deciding factor there is LSU plays at Alabama in Tuscaloosa this year. If that game were in Baton Rouge, maybe this version of this LSU team and that version of that Alabama team, maybe LSU wins. I know Alabama fans are going to be saying, we just beat LSU in Baton Rouge. I get it. But I think our buddy Chris Marley brought up, LSU just lose to Alabama so much in Baton Rouge. They actually might have a better chance to win in Tuscaloosa because they've actually won there a couple times the last 15 years. So, but anyway, behind that, you got South Carolina 5th, Florida 6th. So again, this might be the DJ Lagway factor. Billy Napier and rallying the troops down the stretch of last season, but Florida 6th, despite that brutal schedule. They've got Ole Miss finishing 7th, Texas A&M 8th. I mean, it feels disrespectful to Mike Elko and hot start they got off to last season, but it's just there's so many good teams in the SEC. They've got Tennessee 9th. Again, they were a playoff team last year. They got them dropping. Oklahoma 10th. So if Oklahoma's going to get better with John Mateer, the SEC doesn't think that much better in terms of predicted order of finish. I got Auburn finishing 11th. That's slightly improved from where they've been. Missouri 12. I got to think Eli Drinkwitz saw that in his inbox and said, oh, hell yeah. We got ammunition, brother. Talk some trash. Hey, nobody believes in you guys. Vanderbilt 13. And again, that feels disrespectful. Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers back. Schedule is still tough. Arkansas at 14th. Taylon Green is back, man. Cam Ball, they got all these pieces. Bobby Petrino. They're going to be the third worst team in the SEC. Kentucky coming in at 15 and Mississippi State at 16. I think most people can kind of agree on those two, feel like, just roster-wise, schedules they face, it's going to be tough for either of those teams to finish not 15th or 16th as they, Mark Stoops, he overhauled this roster, though. I don't know what to expect to 2025. But Mississippi State, Jeff Levy, still kind of building this thing. I do think they win an SEC game, though. I think they win a conference game this year. I don't think we'll have anybody go winless in the conference because I think the parity is there. All right, so that is the predicted order of finish and the who the media picked for SEC champion. How about your first, second, and third teams? Well, interesting here. The first team offense, they have Lenore Sellers as the first team quarterback, all SEC team. I thought this would be flipped. Garrett Nussmeier made the second team. Arch Manning made the third team. I thought it would have been flipped. I thought everybody I talked to last week loved Garrett Nussmeier. I thought Garrett Nussmeier would be first team, Lenore Sellers second team. But they have it flipped here. So, again, chip on the shoulder. Garrett Nussmeier can go out there and prove it. Lenore Sellers, again, South Carolina finished so strong. I need to see they put some new pass catchers around him. Hopefully he develops more and more as a passer as the year goes along. The rest of the first team offense, you got Trey Wisner at running back from Texas, Le'Veon Moss at running back from A&M. Again, Trey Wisner, it's basically based off last year, but some folks in Austin think there's a chance CJ Baxter is the feature back this year. Trey Wisner is going to play, but the whole reason Trey Wisner started was because CJ Baxter was hurt. So that'll be one to watch for Texas. Again, both can be and will be very good. Ryan Williams, a no-brainer wide receiver from Alabama. Cam Coleman, a no-brainer wide receiver at Auburn. So those two are right. Eli Stowers, your first team tight end at Vanderbilt. And then offensive line, Jake Slaughter at center, duh. And then Austin Barber, DJ Campbell, Caden Green, Caden Proctor, all on the offensive line. Can't go wrong with any of those. On the second team offense, you had Jaden Ott, running back, transferring over from Cal to Oklahoma. Caden Durham, the LSU running back, who nearly hit 1,000 yards last year. Aaron Anderson, LSU wide receiver. Ryan Wingo, Texas wide receiver, expects to be, I guess, their go-to number one target. Oscar Delp, Georgia tight end. And then on the O-line, you had Parker Brailsford from Bama, Jaden Roberts from Bama, Trey Zune and Armaj Reed-Adams from A&M, and Fernando Carmona at Arkansas. I had Carmona on my first team on my ballot. And then on the third team offense, Arch Manning, Nate Frazier, running back at Georgia, Jam Miller, Alabama running back, Eric Singleton, wide receiver coming over from Georgia Tech, has not played it down yet at Auburn. He makes the third team. And Kevin Coleman, transferred from Mississippi State over to Mizzou, he makes the third team. Jack Endries, the new Texas tight end, replacing Gunnar Helm. And then the O-line was Connor Lew at Auburn, followed by Trevor Gooseby, Xavier Chaplin, Chase Basantis, and Ernest Green. So those are your three all SEC offensive teams. On defense, first team defense, Big Keldrick Falk, who we had on the show last week out of Auburn, Dylan Stewart, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago out of South Carolina, Christian Miller at Georgia, and Colin Simmons at Texas. That is a beefy D-line. At linebacker, you got Whit Weeks from LSU, Anthony Hill from Texas, C.J. Allen from Georgia. Those are the three best backers. You don't get any better than that. And then the secondary, KJ Bolden and Dalen Everett from Georgia, Michael Taft from Texas, and Jamad McCoy from Tennessee. That is a strong, strong first-team defense. On second team, D-line, Caleb Banks, Tim Keenan, Alabama. Caleb Banks from Florida, Tim Keenan, Alabama, LT Overton, Alabama, and R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. Feels a little bit disrespectful with R. Mason Thomas being on the second team. It is what it is. And then the second team linebackers, Centurion Perkins, Ole Miss, Harold Perkins, LSU, Deontay Lawson, Alabama. And your secondary, Malik Muhammad, Texas, Damani Jackson, Alabama, Will Lee at A&M, and Jalen Kilgore, South Carolina. Again, I look at that second team defense and go, that could be the first team. I mean, there's some dudes on that team. And then rounding it out, your third team defense, D-line, Tyreek Sapp, Florida, Trey Moore, Texas, Cam Ball, Arkansas, Xavier Harris, Ole Miss. Linebackers, Torian York from A&M on the third team. Feels disrespectful. Arian Carter, Tennessee, Prince Will Uman-Mielen at Ole Miss. And then your secondary, Keon Sabb, Alabama, Bray Hubbard, Alabama, Boo Carter, Tennessee, and Isaac Smith, Mississippi State. The funny thing about the specialists, it was all Georgia on the first team. Brett Thorson, the punter, Peyton Woodring, the kicker, long snapper, all that stuff. And then return specialist and all-purpose guy, Zachariah Branch, transfer from USC to Georgia. He makes first team on both those categories. So congrats to all those guys. Excited to see what they all do. Didn't really have much of a problem with it. Again, we can nitpick and argue, but the only thing I probably would have had flipped was Nussmeier and Sellers. But again, if Sellers lives up to the hype, man, he's going to be awesome. And, we'll look back and go, hey, maybe I was crazy picking Nuss over Sellers. By the way, they do play in Baton Rouge this year. South Carolina returning the visit there. So everything else I thought was pretty good. I saw some Oklahoma guys saying, you missed on a couple of our guys. I feel like everybody's going to feel like that, right? All right, coming up next, you do not want to miss it. Our exclusive sit-down interview with Greg Sankey, Commissioner of the SEC, who sits down with us every year at SEC Media Days. Asked him a lot of questions about the current state of the SEC in college football, so that is coming your way here in just a second, right here on Locked On SEC. Hey, but first, I want to remind you guys about our friends at Monarch Money. If you've ever wished managing your money felt easier, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch Money is going to put you in the driver's seat. It is like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all of your finances. And Monarch Money, they're more than just a budgeting app. They are a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're going to also start building your wealth. So ask yourself, what's your one financial goal you've been meaning to get serious about? Do you ever wish you had all your accounts and your spending in one place? Have you ever looked at your spending and been surprised by how fast it adds up? I'm telling you right now, when you're using things like Uber and Lyft and Uber Eats and Netflix and Paramount Plus, all that stuff, all those subscription services and all those ride share and everything else, food delivery services, they all add up. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Go take a look at everything you got going on and use our code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. It's going to get you 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege. Get half off your first year with Monarch Money. Rolling along here from SEC Media Days, and always a pleasure, our yearly visit with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. How many years has it been now?
I am in year 11, so June 10th would have been the end of my 10th year, start of my 11th.
That's crazy. And give you credit. You do this every year. You sit down with media members. You answer tough questions. Most years, some easier questions than others. Other years, way tougher questions. What's been the toughest obstacle for you this offseason? Or I say offseason. It's never an offseason, but football
it's never an offseason. Really coming in here and preparing to speak yesterday, compiling the issues to be addressed, went on for a number of pages. And it's an indication of the scope of change that we're experiencing. And so I would put that at the top of the list. You can break that down to any number of issues, but I'd say just the number of items, elements, important issues that are being addressed, working to be resolved, or under consideration.
And I think it's a little bit underrated, too. A lot of people just think, oh, it's Greg Sankey addressing the media at the start of media days. It's just a little mention at the start of media days. But really, it's important from a standpoint of you have to send a message. You have to, calm people's fears. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into what you're going to say at the start of this whole thing.
That's actually well said. And I would add, what I say, some of it ends up being scrolled on the bottom line, the ticker on ESPN. People take signals from that. You also want to have a connection not just to what I think needs to be said, but what our membership is contemplating. And some of that is a challenge, whether it's internally to our league or externally. So there's a lot that goes in. And usually I start right after Destin, so that's the first week of June. You start outlining some issues. And literally, had I written my remarks mid-June and put them away, I would have had to rewrite them over this past weekend anyway.
Sure.
So it all kind of came to a head the last few days.
The other part of it, too, I mean, when you're the best conference, there are people who also want to be the best conference. So there are other commissioners who will say things and all this. And sometimes if shots are fired, you need to either you're taking the bullet or you're, whatever, going into defense mode as well. So I think all that veiled comments or direct comments, I thought some of the things you said yesterday were very well said.
Well, I appreciate that. And, we've had a colleague conference already go. I think we're second. We've been first before. And so you kind of set the tone. And I try not to simply be responsive. When you're asked repeatedly about a set of issues, some of that happened to me in Destin, some yesterday, you eventually do need to respond. But from the standpoint of my remarks, it's really about the framing of issues, either from our perspective or from a bigger perspective related to the entirety of college sports.
Well, let's get into it, because I always ask you every year, do you get tired of winning? And the SEC has had a heck of a start to the year as far as men's basketball championship for the first time in a decade. Baseball wins it all. Softball wins it all. Gymnastics wins it all. I forget the list. Women's
men's
outdoor track.
Diving,
women's
outdoor track and men and
women's tennis.
Yep.
I mean,
Women's
the list goes on and on. Yet, because football has not won it 2 years in a row, where I go, people go, oh, you're the SEC guy. What's wrong with the SEC? So how do you respond to that?
First of all, we want lofty expectations. That's why people are here. You want those expectations that have been earned, not just set, but earned expectations. The second is, hey, congratulations to our opponent. So Michigan and then Ohio State won. I do think you have to go back and look at the game. So Michigan won a Rose Bowl in overtime. It's not like Alabama didn't show up. You look at the last couple of minutes of the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Notre Dame and the opening kickoff. That determined the game. You look at Texas responded against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl right before halftime with a touchdown. Then there's a screenplay that gets broken and goes. And, those are the defining moments in really close competition. And we've been fortunate to end on the right side, the upside of a lot of those close games. The last couple of years it hasn't gone our way. I'm pretty confident we'll be back at or near the mountaintop this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of teams this year. We talk about possible 9-game conference schedule. And there's plenty of pros and cons for why to do. Obviously, the TV partners, I think, have intimated they're ready for that. And who wouldn't want another slate of another week of SEC games? And yet, I believe, looking at the numbers, over half your league last year played a tougher schedule overall than anyone in, I'll just say, the Big Ten. It could be any conference. I think that has to be considered. That you guys, we always play a tough non-conference opponent. Just about everybody does, which helps strength of schedule, regardless if we're playing 8 conference games. That extra game is equal to or better than what other teams are playing.
That's right. And I would observe a couple of things. First, as it relates to our expectations, we've had more teams over the last quarter century win national championships than anyone else. And we've won more national championships than anyone else, and it's not really close. That doesn't happen because they kind of pop up and are good one year. That's about sustained excellence. And then that plays back into the schedule itself. And I went a little bit deeper on metrics in Destin. We'd had all this talk about rigor, strength of schedule, strength of record. And our athletics directors had asked us to bring to them some analyses of those strength elements. And so I did. And then they kind of bubbled up. So I just said to the media, hey, here's the stuff that other people create to tell the story that I'm sharing, which is this league stands unique. I'm not diminishing anyone else. There are good teams and good games in other conferences, but the depth here is incomparable. That's just a reality. Yeah. And that's not just last year or the year before. That's over time. When we talk about the college football playoff, part of our desire is to make sure that that strength is properly recognized in the selection protocol.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of fundamental fairness about playing a strong schedule, playing great teams, being incentivized to do so is healthy. Witness yesterday, there was a non-conference game between two of the power teams that was discontinued. We had the Nebraska-Tennessee series canceled. We had Wake Forest walk away from a return game with Ole Miss. Those are unhealthy aspects of an outcome that's tied to selection for the college football playoff, which says just win a bunch and you'll be better off than playing a tough schedule and going 9-3.
I think that's the toughest problem I have with it, is seeing what Ohio State's non-conference schedule was last year, what Michigan's was 2 years ago, not really challenging themselves, and yet here we are, the SEC constantly week one every year. Texas is going to Ohio State. LSU is going to Clemson. And I just say, okay, if you want to get rid of those games, fine, but that's probably what's going to happen if you force the SEC to go to a 9-game slate.
Well, I don't think it's just reduced to that reality. I think it is a combination of the selection questions. But if you play it out, you're correct. You play it out, you're correct. And that's where I think the adjustments to accommodate and encourage strong play is really, really important. Really, really important. And we'll see if we can have a better understanding of the selection considerations. But maybe there's some different analysis that could help the committee in those decision-making. And some would say, hey, just go back to the old BCS era. Let the computers figure it out. When we had the computers figuring it out, then people said, we need more humans involved. Yeah. So we're trying to find the balance. I think it's one of these circumstances where the pendulum swung really far one way, and swinging back towards the middle would be healthy.
I still think we'll talk with the head of the college football playoff here later this week, but would it be crazy to put some Joe fans on the committee? Like, take a guy off his couch, he watches games all day?
Well, I think one of the issues present is removing, to the extent possible, bias, if I can use that term. And, you know, a fan of a particular team might have a little bit of bias. I'd be equally concerned about the bias against an opponent.
Right.
Like, someone who's a rival on the other side of that fan's interests.
Yeah. Well, maybe you just take an SEC fan, a Big Ten fan, and just put them all in. I don't know. It just seems weird having sitting athletic directors and all, because you're right. Bias is inherent, I think, with a lot of people, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult. But that's just my thought.
It is not the only sport where you have athletics directors on the group. In fact, I saw Coach Kiffin talked about commissioners on the selection committee. We don't have commissioners on the selection committee, and I've actually been one who said we shouldn't have commissioners on the selection committee. You know, athletics directors are challenged to put their conference hat beside the door. We do have recusals for direct conflict of interest, and I think we should continue to debate and discuss whether there's a better way.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever go back to divisions in football? I kind of like that it was, this wide open thing. You just have to be the two best teams and you're going to Atlanta. But I've had several people ask, would there be any thought to maybe going back to that, or quads?
There's not been in our 16-team configuration the thought of going back to divisions. And there are a couple of reasons. One, in divisions, you just didn't see the other side that much.
Yeah.
And with the big names, big brands we have, more interaction among all of our teams is a priority. The second is in divisions, the competitive disparity between divisions was quantifiable and substantial. The range of schedule difficulty was like from 45%, which I'm talking about winning percentage. So ideally, when you make a conference schedule going into it, everybody's opponents would be 500. That would be the most fair way.
Right.
Our range in the division format was like in the low 40s to the upper 60s. So you had almost a 20% variance in strength of schedule. Now that becomes significant because you think about wins and losses. That could be a game difference based on which division you're aligned in. When we went to a single division, within a year there will be disparity. Transfer portal makes the roster more volatile, coaching changes, those sorts of things. But going in, we narrowed that discrepancy. It was like between 48 and 56%. So we were really close to that kind of average opponent's record being 500. And the way it plays out, you have a team that doesn't win a game. Now, they have a tougher schedule because they didn't win a game. If they won 3 games, they would be right in the mean, right in the middle.
Right.
So those are complexities that probably get boring to listen to, but are the practical realities of moving away from divisions. And one is people want to see our teams more frequently, and the other is we narrowed the competitive bandwidth a great deal.
The vibe I got from you over the last couple of years, it was when NIL was broached and all this, I felt like you maybe came from a more traditional sense. Is it more embracing revenue share and NIL and where we are now?
I'll confess, and I've confessed that like I'm a true believer in the college sports enterprise. I think the historical model worked. I think the support systems that have been added over time were helpful to young people moving through that experience and then launching into life without maybe some outsized expectations about what might then follow. The reality is that model's gone. So arguing whether we should or shouldn't is behind us. How do you implement what's new as an outcome of court decisions and an outcome of state laws? That's our reality. I am still concerned on just a footnote that the impact on young people who are in developmental stage of life in this atmosphere, we can just leave right away. You don't build a legacy. You don't build community. Educational continuity can be disrupted and the focus minimized, that those aren't healthy elements and that they change the outcomes. And so the traditional model had someone spend time in a community, both on campus and in a locale.
Right.
If they're an athlete, do something great, you catch the winning touchdown pass against your in-state rival, you've built a legacy there that's special. Continuity of education where you're not losing credits when you transfer. I'm really interested to see, and it's probably going to be 10 years down the road before we really can quantify outcomes, the impact. That said, I think we have a responsibility to figure out this new model. And whether that's embrace or fulfilling that responsibility, either way, that's what we need to do.
A few other things. It's interesting. I remember years ago talking with you, one of the biggest topics was alcohol sales and some of the stadiums implementing and all this. I haven't heard anything of that. Is everything going well on that front across the conference on the stadiums that do it?
I don't think you'll ever have it perfect. I think it's been managed as well as it could be. We've had some instances of acting out, the debris throwing issues that tie to frustrations. It's not just alcohol.
Right.
And by the way, there was alcohol present in our stadiums before.
Right.
We just kind of said it wasn't, and it wasn't sold, but it was there. Now it's part of the sales effort, which helps with management. You know, from just a management standpoint, you don't have the pre-gaming at high levels, if you will, with alcohol that creates acting out, passing out, or throwing up early on, and you have to go to a place to purchase it. So I think it's been a proper implementation, and it's much less of a topic than it was, you know, when I started 10 years ago, probably through 18, 19 is when we started to pivot our policies.
We don't disagree on much. I agree with majority of where you come from. The one issue I go back and forth on is the storm in the field, storm in the court, and the punishments and how to enforce this. I get safety is at the heart of this, but I don't know. The punishment, I go back and forth on it. But you seem pretty staunch on this is something we've got to cut out.
We have a responsibility to provide, and it's written well before I became commissioner.
Sure.
The host has a responsibility to provide a safe environment for the visiting team. That doesn't mean it's welcoming and everybody's friends, but I think part of what's underreported is there are injuries that come from particularly field rushing in college football. By contrast, you saw in basketball, by and large, at the end of the season, our program saying to the fans, we want you to come celebrate, but wait, we're gonna congratulate the participants, the officials are going to leave, the visiting team's going to leave, and then we'll have our fun. That worked really well. I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah.
That fulfills the responsibility for a safe environment. Let's get the visitors off. We'll see what happens in football.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not just me that's concerned. I don't get a vote on these policies.
Right.
Our members have said we need to manage this differently. And we have a difference of opinion among our members. Some would say, hey, everybody come on, the party's fine. Let's go celebrate on the field right away. We do have the fundamental issue around protection for the visitors and the officials. I mean, that's serious. We had some things. I've watched football film last year where we had some field rushes where you're tracking officials like you've got a back judge that has to go 120 yards to exit.
And they can't get
you lose them.
Yeah.
About midfield, you lose them. Well, who's taking care of that official? And
Yeah.
bad things can happen.
I think the fans should be a little bit more educated. Like, if you're 19 and you beat number 2, well, maybe not rush the field. It's not.
Give us some time. Give us just a few minutes to leave, and then come on in. The water's fine.
All right. All right. I think I'm on board with that. Getting the people out, and if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. He is Commissioner Greg Sankey. Always appreciate the conversation and the transparency, and we'll do it again next year.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks again to Greg Sankey for sitting down with us. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you can make your second listen. Check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith's got all the latest rumors, portal entries, signings, recruiting, all of it. Be the most informed fan of the rapid changes of college football. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Have a great day, everybody. Come on back and see us tomorrow. We'll have some more great interviews we had that we haven't released yet from SEC Media Days all this week right here on Locked On SEC.